Hey everyone, it's Andy, the young berry farmer, coming to you back again from the little red shed. Hope you're not tired of it. I know I'm not. Alright, enough idle chit chat. Today I want to talk about something a little bit more controversial than what I've been covering in my past couple of videos, and that is the topic of chemicals, or specifically spray chemicals that you use on farms. And like most controversies, I really think it's only at the level of discussion that it is because of sort of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and broad generalizations about the topic among people who like to talk about it. So the reason why sprays are so commonly used on farms is because they're one of the most effective at times and commonly used tools against a huge problem that farmers have to deal out there in the field, and that is pests or pest pressures. It doesn't matter what kind of a farmer you are, if you're growing apples, if you're growing strawberries, corn, wheat, soy, anything, doesn't matter where you're located, doesn't matter what year it is. If you grow something at a commercial level, you have to deal with the pests that are going to try and take out your crop. Now, there's a bunch of different philosophies on how to do this, and the point and perspective of this video is not to go over all of those philosophies and which ones, are good or bad, or if that even exists. What I want to talk about today is more how I deal with the pest pressures on my farm and why I do it the way that I do it. Now, before I start talking about and showing you my specific practices on Twin Cities Berry Company, which is the name of my farm, I first want to address a question or topic that gets asked of me a lot. Pretty much every time that I'm at a farmer's market, I'm sure every other farmer out there gets asked this question often whenever they're interacting with the public or even other farmers too. And that question is, do you use chemicals on your farm? And first of all, I just want to say that I totally understand why that question gets asked. The consumer could be worried about the effect of a spray on the environmental health, on pollinator devastation. They could be worried that the residue could have an adverse effect on the taste of the crop, and more commonly, the effect that a residue from a pesticide that may still be on there could have on human health, or the health of themselves, the health of their children, anything like that. So being inquisitive about something like that is totally fine. It's encourageable, it's good. And asking a farmer, the person who's probably dispensing those chemicals, if they do, is a great primary source to ask. So good job in seeking out information on something that you think is important to you. The problem comes in that the term chemical, or the question, do you use chemicals on your farm, is an impossibly broad question, just because it assumes that all chemicals are bad, and that's just not true. Essentially, everything is comprised of chemical components. If water is a chemical, if I irrigate my strawberries out on the farm, that means I use chemicals. So I think it's important for both the farmer and the consumer to acknowledge that there's a huge variance in what the term chemical actually means. Now, obviously, there are chemicals that are incredibly harmful to the environment and to human health, and especially at certain concentrations. But there are other chemicals that aren't going to have very much of an effect on either. It could be environmentally benign. It could have no effect on human health. So I think then a much better question to ask a farmer if they're around or you're talking to them would be something like, what sprays do you use on your farm and why? Or even, what are your pest control practices? That question seems a lot more loaded. It is a lot less, it feels less like an accusation and more like you're being inquisitive into learning more about where your food comes from. So here we go. Here it is, the Biodome. This is my solution to the spray issue in its current form. And I know what you're thinking. This thing looks like some sort of engineer's nightmare. It looks like a dilapidated funhouse. It looks like one of those wedding tents that's gonna collapse when someone dances too hard. It looks like a bouncy castle that's haunted by an evil clown. And you know, this is one of the ugly things just about being a first-generation farmer. I don't have a whole lot of experience to go on to make something like this look pretty the first time that I try it. I don't have the infrastructure, human capital in place to ask parents or family members how they did it back in their day, or years of experience growing up on a farm myself. I basically just have an idea and a couple afternoons to brainstorm and put it onto paper and hope that it works out fine. But I will say, as ugly as this thing is, it is currently doing the job that I designed it for. So it's got that going for it, which is nice. Let's try and get inside here. Oh God. Okay, here we are. Here is the inside of the Biodome. So it's being held up right now by these PVC poles. If I had more money, I would be using probably stainless steel poles, but right now this is all I got. And we have some polyester wire, or not polyester, we have some poly wire that is stringing up a grid system up top, and then we've just got the strawberries down here. And if we look inside here, this fruit just looks, you know, absolutely incredible. We don't have any insect damage. And I know what you're thinking, Andy, if you're keeping insects from getting in, that's great, but how do you deal with pollinators? And that's what we've got over here. I brought some buddies in myself. This is actually the house for a solitary bee called a leafcutter bee. It's a summertime bee. It's usually used for vegetables, and they hang out in these houses. And let's see if we can find one. Shh, okay, here's one right here. Do you see them? They're pretty small, but they're really cute. Oh, there he goes. And they're just going from flower to flower, making sure that I'm having as high of a quality as fruit as I can in here. I have not sprayed once inside the Biodome since I put it up. So to have fruit quality like I'm observing in here without having any sort of chemical treatment on it is working out really well. Like I said, aesthetically, it's not the best. Sometimes I have to crouch when I'm working in here, but as time goes on, I think we're going to have a pretty nice system in here, both aesthetically and from a yield and quality standpoint as well. So there you go. That was the rough intro to the Biodome, and so far, even though it's hideous, I love it. It has eliminated the use of any sort of sprays inside that area, and it has increased marketable yield and really nice looking fruit compared to when I harvest over in the open field. But like anything, it's not a silver bullet. It has its disadvantages too. It's hard to work with. It was hard to put up. Obviously, the support structure isn't perfected yet. And like you'd expect, it is not cheap. It is a upfront expense that will probably save you money in the long term because you'll save money on sprays. It will likely, from what I've observed so far, give you higher marketable yields. You'll have a marketing advantage of being able to say that you don't spray any of your fruit at all, but you still have this fantastic quality looking fruit. But you need to be willing to make that investment up front. And I was, as I laid out in my previous video about making investments, it increases efficiency and productivity on my farm, and it actually adds physical equity and value to my business compared to a spray that wouldn't really do something like that. So I'll be checking in with all of you about the performance of the Biodome as the year goes on. If you have any suggestions, if you have any, pretty witty retorts on how terrible of an idea it is, I'd love to read them. Look at them down below. And yeah, thanks so much. I'll have another video up soon, and I'm not going to do over and out again. That was a bad idea last video. So working on an outro. For now though, bye. Here's another one. This is Joseph. And a guy right there, that's Reginald. We've got 20,000 bees in here. We don't want to make them angry. Actually, I don't care. They don't have stingers at all. You guys are so small. The honeybees would beat you up if they got in here. Dumb bees.